will not be good because we have to go immediately to things where we're going to be downloading models from the site as well.
I see. Okay.
And you can distribute those things, but don't rely on them as your primary thing. They have to go online.
Sounds good.
Because we're going to be doing that all through the day. Well, you can distribute them. Feel free to distribute them. It's just we need them to be able to go online starting immediately.
Okay. Well, we'll start with that then.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's try IBM.
IBM. Yeah. So I'll type it up here for those.
It's going to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you throw it up?
They'll put up your hand.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go here and. I'm going to call up a browser, and from this browser I'm going to say tiny URL, and this will be SYD ABM Bootcamp Materials, and actually Bootcamp 5-2016, like that. I think that's the one. Okay, and I will put this up on the big screen for people who want to see it in a little bit larger size. Okay, here we go. There we go. So this URL will be the URL you want to keep handy all through the boot camp, because my successive models will be posted at this URL. And there'll be updates to the slides at this URL, including those that I've just presented. So if we go to this URL, and I'll keep it up here whilst I do that. If we go to that URL here, what you will find is a set of materials that are called participant resources. Okay, now these materials broadly fall into the categories that I had mentioned. The lecture slides, including those that I just offered, will be posted here over time. We're going to have models built in class. This is where my models will go throughout the day. There are these example models, which I've mentioned, including dozens, and the step-by-step tutorials and references. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to this AnyLogic Examples folder, okay? And we are going to load in from these examples a certain model, okay? And it's going to be called GIS Food Environment. So if you scroll down, sorry, I went into one of these subfolders. Okay, it's called GIS Food and PA Environment, okay, and Physical Activity Environment. So TAs, if you could make sure that people are accessing these things, okay. So where did I go? Let me go back to this main folder, and I will go back again. Okay, so this is the main folder as accessed by this tiny URL that I just entered, and having gotten to that main folder, I went down to the AnyLogic 7 examples area. Okay, AnyLogic 7 examples. Okay, and going to the AnyLogic 7 examples, I scrolled down to this area that was called GIS and PA. In other words, Physical Activity Environment, and I clicked on that. Okay?
Cool.
Okay. Okay, now, this model includes several pieces to it. Okay? So it has this model file, and it has this so-called cache. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go click on this file, and you will see something that is probably unpleasant. Okay? So if you click on this, you will see something like that, which I know the heart does not lift at it at that for most of you. So if you click on that, you should see something along those lines. And up here, there should be something that says download. Okay? And you will want to download this. Okay? And by so doing, that model will be placed on your computer. Now, that's the exact same process you're going to be going through to get my successive models, except they're going to be in the models built-in class folder. But you don't have to worry about this. This is just what the AnyLogic model looks like behind the scenes. Having downloaded that to your computer, I'd like you to fire up AnyLogic. Okay? So I will do the same, just so you can see the process here. So I'm going to call up AnyLogic. Now, when you call up AnyLogic, it'll differ a little bit. Depending on what version you have, you'll have a screen like this that has different things on it. You can often take a while to load, so I'll give you a minute or two here for that to load out. And if you're opening it for the first time, you will often see things screen that can be a little bit oriented, and I want to help you sort of navigate through it. So mine comes up here because I've been in AnyLogic at least once before. But this is probably what many of you will see, something along these lines. Do you see that? Okay. If you see something like this, and I use that word advisedly, if you see something like that, you're going to want to go here, not to discourage you from exploring this sometimes, but you will want to, okay, if you get a message like this, just say close. But you will want to do a minimize up here. And at that point, you will see something along these lines in front of you. Do you see that? Okay. Okay. Who needs TA help? TA stand ready. A Canadian phalanx. Ready to serve. Okay. Okay.
Just close down on projects.
What's that?
I've got projects up there already.
Okay, yeah, you open projects. If you could close, just to avoid confusion, file. If you have projects open already, you can actually do file, close. Oh, yeah. You can do file, close all, and then that will clean them up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you should see something like this. Do you see that? Okay. Now, the next step here. So we've just called up AnyLogic. I'm going to orient you with respect to this, which will be important for working our way through some models this morning. This morning we're going to be looking at a set of models and tweaking them. So I'd like you to go here to File, Open, and I'd actually like you to go find that model that you just downloaded, okay? For many of you, it will be in your downloads area right here, okay? So how did I do that? I did File, Open, and Downloads. Okay, I've got to be careful. I'm going to burn out my throat here. Okay. File, Open, Downloads, and then I'd like you to select the model that you downloaded. Okay. Okay. Who needs TA help here? Okay. TA deployment. Okay. Your second TA, Ellen.
No, I was just, we don't need to keep it there because I'm going to file all my stuff. So we don't need to keep it in downloads.
You don't need to keep it in downloads. I'm just showing for those who are not familiar with it.
Because I'm just going to move it and file it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Please be encouraged to place this elsewhere. I'm just trying to, for those of you who are not as confident, I'm trying to show where you would find it, okay? So wherever you've put it, wherever it lives, I'd like you to open that model, okay? Okay. Now, you should see something like this. Do you see that? Okay. Does anyone recognize that city? Yeah. It's Melbourne. Okay, great. So we built this model in Melbourne back in November. And I thought I'd put it in there because it had some nice features. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, we've just opened a first AnyLogic model. Now this model has many pieces to it, but before we start exploring those pieces, I would like to to give you a bit of experience running the model. Now, this model is a GIS model, and actually for it to run, you need to be online. But if you've obtained the model, you're online. Okay, it'll just take a little bit of time to load in the model. So I'd like you to, having loaded it in, I'd like you to go down to where it says simulation, and I'd like you to say run, okay? And it will actually go to run this. But as I say, it's going to take a little bit of time to load things in. It needs to figure out, and you can see it actually getting some information down here. But it's actually loading some information in from the web. Some information about routes from individual houses to individual supermarkets and convenience stores and parks, okay? So what we see depicted in front of us is a kind of micro world. What we're doing is we're simulating forward as days pass people's behavior in this micro world. And we're going to go explicate that a little bit more. But what you see is individuals who are encoded as these kind of stylized human shapes. Okay? They're somewhat like bowling pins. And they have a set of houses with which they are affiliated. So they have a specific home, and they go between the home in search of food. They go to one of two places. They either go to a convenience store, which is shown in this green shape. Maybe it should be bright red, or they go to a supermarket here, which is shown here as a larger store. Okay. These supermarkets and these convenience stores are placed at their actual positions. This is based on GIS databases for locations of convenience stores and supermarkets within Melbourne area. And these individuals go from their home to these supermarkets and convenience stores and back in order to obtain food, and then they consume the food. And individuals here have somewhat different habits. So some of these individuals, you may notice, are thinner than others, and they have different habits, and those habits are reflected not only by preferences but by distances to supermarkets, distances to convenience stores. So this convenience store right across the road, they might go to it a lot, even though they have somewhat of a preference for a grocery store which is across town. Okay, so these individuals go, and then there are these parks which ring the fair city of Melbourne, which also exert influence on their physical activity based on their distance from parks. Okay, but let's go explore this more. Do you see something like this with people flitting around?
Are there people with Macs having trouble?
Yeah,
So I'll show you how to fix that.
Okay, so Dylan, do you want to characterize the dysfunction?
download to the .xml on it.
Yeah, and you can't simply rename it. You have to go command.
Properties command R.
Command I, so whatever.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff, could you make note of that?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that before in recent times.
Yeah,
What's that?
I have seen those.
You didn't have the problem on some Macs, but you did on others? Okay.
What is the problem? Because I have Mac and I don't have.
So apparently when they downloaded the file, it was downloaded with a different extension to it.
Extra extension.
And then they had to rename it to be an ALP file, to be a file that AnyLogic knew about rather than a...
It added the extension, so it had .ALP, but then it added .xml. I assume was
Oh,
kind of
okay.
So you didn't have that on your Mac?
No, because I downloaded through Google Drive, so everything is loaded to my Mac by itself. So
so
yeah.
yeah, through Google Drive, and
Okay. Thank you for alerting that. We're going to need to navigate that through the boot camp, and I'm going to ask the TAs to give that some thought about how we can do that most easily. This is a new challenge, actually. We have a lot of people with Macs at our boot camps, but okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you see something along these lines? Most of you who haven't had a Mac attack.
Yeah, some getting better very quickly.
Yeah.
Some get
Yeah. There's a certain propensity for girth that's being suffered even in the course of a year. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, while the others are catching up, I'd like you to go down and search. If you go to this area here, this navigation menu, and you scroll down, you'll find the names of various stores, various Kohl's stores, and names of other supermarkets. But you should be able to go down to an area here that's called population. And if you click on population, you will actually find a depiction of the state and indeed the rules governing the evolution of different individuals in the population. How did I do that? Whither have I gone? Well, up from this area here, I went and I scrolled down and I clicked population, okay? Like that. Just to give you a sense of navigation. This is serving a subversive purpose here. I'm trying to clue you into how you use this software as well. So we've navigated down to a person, and in fact, by clicking here, we can go between different people in the population. Now, each of these people will be in a certain state, and you'll notice this particular person is enjoying a most unfavorable propensity to visit convenience stores. This particular person here.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
So this, on a tablet here, the display is very bunched and packed. Is any logic optimized for tablets?
I've never heard of it being used on a tablet before. So.
So we're getting this.
Yeah, I would suggest that you probe it by adjusting the zoom a little bit. And okay, so ladies and gentlemen, this depicts the characteristics of a particular person, and there's a lot of information being packed into what we see here. So you'll see that this person's situation is characterized along a couple of different dimensions. Number one, they're in a set of states with respect to food-seeking behavior, seeking it either from a supermarket on the one hand or a convenience store on another. There's also a set of processes involving changes to their weight, which involve a classic energy balance with energy in, energy expenditure via sort of basal metabolic energy expenditure, and energy expenditure via physical activity in a way that's been affected via the parks, the proximity to a park. There's also a fairly articulated characterization of their decision making. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've navigated here, you should be able to right-click on here, right-click and drag. And perhaps one of the TAs can remind me, is it Option click and drag on a Mac?
No, you just tap on the thing.
It drag it over? Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't
Said
on mine.
V4 on yours.
Okay.
Can't select and drag with my mouse.
Maybe you
Right.
cut the file.
You can do it with the mouse,
That's
with
fine, I can.
the right
Just
click.
download it
Okay.
again and try to get it.
So here, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fairly articulated depiction of a person's decision-making process. So when a person comes to eat a meal, they go through a process of choosing where to go, what sort of meal to eat, and indeed, if there's none left over, they will go and seek new to replenish their larder of food. Okay, so go shopping for food is a possible outcome, otherwise eating particular meals. So here we have depicted fairly visually several features of a person's situation, their current state, their current situation in terms of their current weight, which is changing a bit over time, their food seeking, their current state effective food seeking. We also have a depiction of processes involving them. So how they choose one food type versus another, how they choose to shop at a convenience store versus a supermarket. And this decision process is characterized with a sort of a little algorithm of sorts that's illustrated visually. And then there's a set of processes involving their weight. Their current weight is associated with this so-called stock here, this weight in kilograms, and then the evolution of their weight over time according to the flows. So here we have a depiction of kind of a theory of individual action, which is characterized in this model. This model depicts, as it were, a hypothesis, a dynamic hypothesis for how people might make decisions with respect to food. And then we can look at a broader level of the population to see what's happening. But let's go scroll up here, ladies and gentlemen, by that same way that you scrolled here. I right-click and drag. Some of you may use your mouse. We can go up and see other information that is summarized across the population. Okay? So, for example, we can look at a graph which shows for individuals the fraction of their meals taken at convenience stores on the x-axis versus their weight in kilograms on the y-axis. Okay? So here, each person is a dot. This person, for example, took just 10% of their meals at a convenience store, and they weigh 75 kilograms. Okay? Whereas this person here took something like 25% and weighs something like 80 kilograms. This individual here is a devotee of convenience store food. This one out here, and their weight is upwards of 110 kilograms. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, if we go scroll up here, so, yes?
How did you get back to that point?
So, thank you. Thank you. So if we went down, thank you so much. If you went down here to the population, you can press this. So I went to the level of the individuals here, and you can press this button to go whence you came. To go back to the main model, the overall model, the so-called main view, you can press this button and go back to main here. Okay? Thank you for asking, Roberto. Key question. Okay? You get a gold star. Okay. Okay, so we went back. Let me go through that again. Again, by navigating around, you can navigate down to particular members of the population, see their evolution over time here. But then we can go back to the population by pressing that button to go up. Okay? Now, pressing this, we could scroll up. So this is a depiction of the population. You can imagine this is kind of like studying a subject population in a study. We're summarizing for each individual in the study their particular characteristics, the fraction of meals they've eaten at convenience stores and their weight on the one hand. We have another depiction of them up here. For example, their distance from a grocery store versus their weight up here. And you can see there's somewhat of a trend, although it's not very clear. We can go look here, what's the ratio of distance between their distance to the grocery store versus to a convenience store here. We can scroll up yet further and ask for their preference for meals for grocery stores, how does that compare, for convenience stores, how does that compare to their weight? And we can go and look at the distance to parks on the one hand and their weight in kilograms. All of these depict kind of associations between a person's characteristics and outcomes of various sorts, particularly in terms of weight here, that we can conduct with this model population. And those give just a flavor here as to what's being captured for this population. As it turns out, we can also summarize information such as the fraction of people that are overweight or obese quite readily in a model such as this as well. So here we have a model. This model depicts, as it were, a kind of simplified theory of things out there in the world, a theory that posits certain types of behavior, certain types of decision-making among food choices, certain types of decision-making involve food sources and people's change in weight over time. And we are examining the logical consequences of that theory when we embed people in a certain environment, which is based on GIS data from Melbourne. Okay, yes?
How did you test the validity of this model?
That's a good question. So one of the things that you would do with a model like this is a model we built in class in Melbourne. This is a toy model. this one. But one of the ways that you would test a model like this is by checking the consistency of the data that you secure from the model and comparable empirical data. Now, a model such as this provides a great deal of extra information on latent factors that you're not going to be able to readily measure from the world. But it will often pick up as well from the model. You'll be able to measure certain things from the model that do have analogs in the world, for which there is empirical data available. And one of the things that you'd be doing to help cross-check this model is you build it with respect to a certain subset of data, and then you could check it with respect to data that you didn't use in building it. In short, empirical data that had to do with emergent properties of the model. For example, the fraction of people in this model that are overweight, or by looking at model associations between, say this, the fraction of meals eaten at convenience stores as recorded by diarying versus people's weight. You can do comparisons between model results and comparable results from empirical data in order to test the significance of the models, the differences between the model depiction on the one hand and the data from the world. Typically, there's going to be a lot of latent factors in these models that you're not going to have observed data for, but there will be some important subset where you will have data. And we'll be talking later in this boot camp about processes such as calibration, where we seek to make use of empirical data. And we'll be talking about processes associated with that, whereby we're comparing model results with empirical data from the standpoint of scrutinizing whether the model has a plausible depiction of behavior in the world. What I will say is that often it's not until you build a model such as this that some of that information about the world really comes out in the form of direct observation. So there's often a fair bit of tacit knowledge that people will have about patterns in the world that unless there's a model that actually depicts something similar, they may not be able to put their finger on. Those who have observed similar patterns in the world won't be able to formulate their observations. But when you have a model, they can compare their experience with what's depicted in the model. So in short, models here are tools for checking the degree to which our theories about the world, as depicted explicitly in this form, the degree to which they actually are consistent with empirical evidence. A model like this is not something which stands in contraposition for evidence from the world. A model like this helps us check the degree to which our theory about the world is in fact consistent with empirical evidence. And that's because a lot of what's depicted in the model is something that can be compared with empirical evidence. I don't know if that helps at all. The models that we build incorporate a lot of data, but often there's data that they don't incorporate, which can be used to cross-check their behavior and check for its consistency. In this sense, though, I would say it's not terribly different from our situation when we develop theories in our heads and we wish to validate them against the world. The difference is here, if we take this theory out of our head and we put it into a computational model, there's less wiggle room. A theory in our head is hard to share with someone. We have some idea about how the world works, but it's hard to fully express it in a fashion that's unambiguous. It is also hard to check if it's consistent with empirical evidence, because it's hard for us to understand in our head alone the quantitative implications of a theory. We can imagine all of this in our head. We could posit a world where this is the case, but understanding what its implications are for factors such as these is something that we as humans are just not well suited to do. It's a shortcoming of our hardware that we're not able to easily imagine the implications. With a model, we can take that theory out of our heads. We can take a theory that's quite articulated and put it in an unambiguous fashion. This allows us to be shared, such as between those in the room. It allows it to be critiqued and advanced. And it allows it to be compared against empirical evidence. Absent capturing this sort of understanding in a model, we're at a loss to be able to evaluate that theory in a rigorous way. With a model, it's not perfect, but it's a step towards making progress in our thinking because it allows us to more quickly falsify a hypothesis. And it's precisely that we do. That when we produce a model, we can look at the results and test them using familiar tests, non-parametric tests like the Kruskal-Wallis test or the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test, the Mann-Whitney 1AU test. You could look to compare model results in a non-parametric way against empirical evidence and see if they are significantly different. So models are useful tools for falsifying theories in kind of a Popperian context. We'll come back to this point in just a few minutes with my lecture. Okay, so this is one model. It's a model that depicts behavior in the context of neighborhoods, the effects of parks on the one hand, the effects of convenience store and grocery store location for individuals whose weight evolution is characterized in a simple metabolic model. I'd like to close this model to stop that, and we can actually keep it up if you'd like to. We're going to come and examine several further models, but I'd now like to go into some of the motivations